Welcome back to the lab. It's Friday the somethingth of May. The workshop's empty. It's good. I like an empty workshop. The workshop is empty because that little critter's outside. And the other little critter, a bit hard to see, isn't she? She's hiding back there. There's been stuff and things happening with that as well. We'll talk about that later. What we're doing right now is we're going to play Lego. We're going to stick that block there on the back of that block there. We're going to put this block on the back of that block, and then we're going to take it to Hampton Downs, and we're going to see if Glenn can achieve his silly little personal goal of going 1 minute 0.0 something seconds, so faster than a minute 10 with a Nissan March at Hampton Downs. Okay, this extensively modified Nissan March. I could go through the list of things that have changed since the last time I drove the car. It depends how in depth we want to get. Quite a lot of things have changed, but most of them are very, very minor. The biggest change is going to be basically just our Wiggins couplings here on our boost pipes, so we don't blow silicon couplers again, because that's dumb when that happens, and this happened a couple of times, and it's dumb. You go to the racetrack expecting to do, or hoping to do things, and then you can't because of something silly, a $30 silicon coupler, so they're gone. Other than that, it's pretty much the same, except lighter, and it's got a few little wingy thingies and a bit more aero underneath and stuff, so we'll just see how it goes. It at least looks shiny. Pays not to walk into the trailer when you back up, Glenn. Who put that there? So at least, yeah, looks good. Looks shiny. Right, let's get her on the trailer. I bet you didn't know we'd done a rotary conversion on it, eh? It's over there somewhere, over yonder, making a little noise. So we made it here. The weather is superb, albeit very cold. Quite a lot of ice to wash off the windscreen on the ute to get out of the driveway this morning. We're kind of almost parked by ourselves. We're next to Cheryl Curran, an old mate over there. And I'm not sure where his car is. We've got a couple of BMWs here. That's, I think that's V8-erized. I'm not entirely certain. There's Stuart Hill's machine with our diffuser we made for him as per his specs on the back there. Gregory Hurst's MR Twice. Now the MR Twice had a little bit of an altercation. Gregory's got that up on his channel. I suppose I should probably put a link on there. And also his alternator fell off. Sounds like a weird thing, but it did. A bit hard to put it back on. It broke the brackets off the engine, so he's just running a decent sized battery, charging it up in pits here before he heads out, and he's just going to go for it. Should I put a link in the description to your little incident that you had?
Yeah, might as well.
Might as well. You don't mind the views?
My dodgy spin.
Oh, we all fall off.
Yep.
Usually.
Brother's racing, but usually it's car to car rather than tyre wall.
The best thing is when you fall off and you don't hit something, but it doesn't always work out like that, as we all know. Bruce's car. Oh, I haven't seen Bruce. He's kicking around somewhere. And Bruce has got something under the back here. We did some of this diffuser stuff, and he did some finishing off himself. That's a bit of the lab's handiwork in there. Ben's car. How are you, Bruce? You all good? Good. And this is Ben's car, and I got this wrong before many moons ago. I was pointing at the car saying bloody rotary, saying it was Ben, but it wasn't Ben, it was someone else. That's our cage we built for him. Lemon rotaries. Here's Brendan with his HDT VK, isn't it?
Yeah, VK.
VK Commodore replica sort of thing. Now this is a LS3.
LS3.
Yep. LS3. It's actually got quite a bit of fruit in it. If you look around, there's a lot of lovely stuff in the car.
Yeah, full rest deck, electric mirrors, electric windows, central locking.
That's good though. That's good. You don't want handles in the way. Do you want to open the bonnet for us? Let's have a look in there. Have a bit of a wander around and have a look at everyone's cars. Well, we've got, oh, look at that. See, there's nothing wrong with that. Our Bedford could do with one of those, isn't it? That'd make a boogie.
Yeah, it goes right.
And what are we, I'm going to guess 550 horsepower?
You go.
Oh, is it more than that? 650 horsepower?
600.
600. And, oh, I don't know what these things weigh. 1350?
I'm not sure on current weight, but at one point it was 1350.
Yep.
Might be a little bit less now.
So not bad power to weight ratio and very different power, eh? 600 horsepower from a naturally aspirated V8 is a lot different to 600 horsepower from the turbo car.
And fully road legal.
He could drive it here, but he didn't. He got passed by someone in a little march on the trailer on the way in. We won't talk about that. Very cool. Very cool. And we got this beastie here. We got all the tyres all sussed for this round. We're not going to have a tyre incident.
I've got a very nice looking puncture repair.
Yep.
So it should be right.
It should be alright. I've got one spare wheel and tyre off the march, but I don't think it'll fit on there.
Well, I've got my 50 my drift spec wheels. Worst comes to worst.
Right, spare wheels this time. That's the way to go. Bring spares and you won't need them. And we got another little starlet. Not to be mocked. These little starlets can actually go quite fast. What's the specs on this beastie?
It's got a 4AG
4AG?
TE.
TE? And it goes good. That's what we want to hear. I'm repeating everything because I'm using a mic that might not pick up everyone else's chatting. So there you go. Cool. I think the rest of the cars are probably hiding in the pit garages. Really want to wander over there just at the moment. We got Ben Vanderdrift over there with his Mitsubishi. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Yeah, so one session, and there's some pretty ominous signs, although it may be Glenn's fault. That's oil in there. It's quite a lot of oil, although a little bit of oil goes a long way, right? So it could be that Glenn has been a bit silly and potentially overfilled the engine a little bit. We're kind of hoping that might be what it is. And it's overfilled the catch can, which should hold 2 litres, easily 2 litres. It's a big catch can, but it looks like it's overfilled that, pumped it out. I don't know how it's managed to do that and still have half a dipstick on the engine. But it has showered oil all over that left rear tyre, which no doubt was the reason for the spin on the exit of turn 1 that you'll see if the GoPro's done its thing. Oil everywhere on the left hand side of the engine bay. Right hand side's still pretty good. Taking the cautious route, put it back on the trailer and we'll take it home rather than risk any problems. Now I have run it up here because I can rev it, not annoy the neighbours. We don't have any serious amount of blow-by, certainly not while free revving. It obviously has at least some while it's on full boost. So it may be a Hampton Downs thing where we're pumping all the oil up to the top of the motor and it's getting into the ventilation system and chucking it out. That's pretty common here. Or maybe something else, but it's running okay. It did have a little bit of a misfire. Yes, I probably should have backed off, but the good news is I came here wanting to do sub 1 minute 10 and that second lap was a 1 minute 09 something, whether it's in 0.99 or a 0.001, I don't know. I will look later. So all the E85 I think has gone bad. I think that's where our slight little misfires come from, so that's got to go in the bin. Everything's being logged. I will look at the logs when I get home with the laptop, see whether maybe we got some trigger errors or something like that. But anyway, job done. It would have been nice to have some more sessions. I think we could have got a 108 easily, maybe a 107, but I mean everyone says that, right? But I think there was more in it. But never mind, so it didn't end up upside down. Still looks good. We haven't thrown a rod out of the block. We might, I don't know what's happening exactly with the engine. We'll find out. We could possibly have some bore damage or some bearing damage or whatever, depending on what it's done in there. We'll take the filter off, cut it open, see. But other than that, it's not the end of the world. So pretty happy, but a little bit sad, but not the end of the world. So very good. It's still a nice day. You guys want to see what's making all the noise? I'll see if I can zoom in for you. Oh, I missed it. There's a car went that way. I'm very zoomed in, too much, can't see. There, see? Race cars. I'll zoom out a little bit, might make it better for you. There you go. That's the first time I've watched race cars for a little bit. Normally I don't bother with just driving it. Alright, let's take it home and see what's going on. Back in the workshop. It's about 5 o'clock. I've had enough for today. So the birds, by the sounds of that. So I've had the under tray off. Sort of cleaned that. It's clean on the inside. There's a little bit of residue on the outside there. I've cleaned all the engine bay. That's good. I emptied what was in the catch can. Now I took about 400 mils out at the racetrack and probably another 300 or so here at home. So I had about 700 mils in the catch can, but it still apparently has managed to absolutely spray that everywhere, which is interesting. That would indicate there's a huge amount of blow-by. However, when you run the engine, even giving it stick, while you're standing there watching it, there doesn't appear to be any significant blow-by at all, if any. I couldn't see any fumes or anything coming through the filter there. While we're sitting there giving it a beating in the pits, bouncing it off the rev limiter. It may have been broken anyway, right? What arm are we going to do? I know, we could have totally destroyed it, but the thing is, it's fine. There's actually nothing wrong with this. It's possible Glenn has accidentally got a bit carried away when I filled the oil up. I do tend to run it a little bit higher than the factory level, and I may have got a bit silly with it and done it while some of the oil was still sitting up in the top of the motor or something like that and run far too much. Because despite there being, let's say, 700 mils in the catch can, and a little bit of oil goes a long way, so there was probably 100 mils, if that, scattered throughout the engine bay. It was probably more like 30 or 40 mils. We still had half a dipstick, so there's plenty of oil in the engine. So I've checked the logs. The whole workshop's in a big mess because I did this in a hurry to see whether I'd take it up tomorrow or not. I potentially could. That's totally lying. It's after 5 o'clock. I had the filter out, took the filter apart. As you can see, I'm not going to touch it because I did just wash my hands. We're good. There's no debris or anything in here. There's no sign of any metal at all. Everything's all happy. Oil pressures and everything were all good. I suspect the fuel might be a little bit old. So I pulled all our spark plugs out. Way back to the back here. Look at that. There's a troublemaker. Whipped all our coils and spark plugs out. Had a look at all the stalks to make sure they were all kosher, not arcing through, which they can do. And all the plugs looked beautiful. We are about 15 psi down on compression on the front 2 cylinders compared to the others. I'm not overly concerned about that, but that could be part of our issue. Engines do have blow-by. They're not perfect. They do have a little bit. And Hampton Downs is a great track for finding weaknesses in crankcase ventilation systems up in the top of the engine here. If you're revving the snot out of the engine, as we are doing, you tend to pump a lot of oil up into the top of the motor. And we could put some restrictors in there. We should have done that while I had it apart, and I'm silly. Some smaller restrictors. I'm silly and I didn't do it. But that may affect the way the variable cam timing works as well. So there's a bit of a gamble. If you get it wrong, it's a big job to fix. But anyway, as I was saying, if you put all the oil up in the top of the motor and start filling up all the crankcase ventilation bits and bobs in there, it doesn't take a lot of gas flow to push a lot of oil out of the engine. Imagine if you actually covered the outlets for these hoses completely in oil. You only have to move a very small amount of gas and you'll just pump oil out of the motor. So it's fine, but probably needs some tweaking. There's a couple of real easy options that we can do. And I almost could do it tonight if I really felt like it, but I'm not that desperate to get it sorted. There's another 2 ventilation ports this end at the top. They just bridge across from one cover to the other cover. You could take an outlet from that and run that to there so that the gas flow through each port is reduced. It's less flow, so it's less likely to drag oil out with it. I can do a leak down test. I did have the borescope out. Look, there it is up there. See? That there. I dragged that down and gave us all a bit of a look on top of our pistons and at the bores and all that. And it's fine, you know. There's no real dramas, but probably not dragging it to the track tomorrow. But I might. We did do a 109. I mean, it's not really what I would call a 109. It's a 109. It's a 9.95 something, I think it was. So it's a bit weak, but it was a 9. We went from, our previous time was an 11, I believe. And we skipped the 10s and we went into 9s. I firmly believe the car will do 8s pretty easily. I know, it's a whole nother second, but yeah, that wasn't the best lap. The track really wasn't completely sorted. And my setup wasn't sorted. So, we'll see. We may return to the track tomorrow. I'll conclude this video tomorrow and we'll see whether I do or I don't. Sunday morning. No, Sunday afternoon, just. As you can see, we are sitting here at home. I don't think there's any actual major issues. I just decided to play it safe and not go to the effort of zooming up to the track today. We've got what's called GTR Festival. It's basically for all Nissans and Nissan powered vehicles, etc. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll have all day, multiple sessions, and we can go up there and we can make sure this is actually happy and doesn't have any major problems. The guys ran the first session this morning. Apparently it was wet, so times weren't great. The second session's probably happening right now, I guess, or has happened. And then there's one more this afternoon. Look, if I put this on the trailer right now, if I got a wriggle on and didn't film this video, we would make the last session for the day. But I think it's actually quite a lot of effort just to do one session, and it may or may not confirm what I think was going on with here anyway. There is a little bit of blow-by. We had a problem with the thermostat on the thing, right? I bought a different brand thermostat to what I normally run. When we put that in and got the thing up and running for the first time, it ran too hot. So I was trying to resolve that. So the poor car ended up running a lot longer than it should have done here in the workshop trying to resolve that. It was a catch-22 situation. I wasn't going to go and put it on the dyno while it was running too hot. That was never going to end well anyway. So they got off to a bad start. Then they were fine. The rings all bedded in fine. We could see earlier from some of the other videos there's no fumes coming out of here. You could take the filter off and you could put your thumb over it, and yeah, you'd eventually build up some pressure in the system, but it would take a while. It wasn't a problem. It's taking less time to do that now, but I still don't think it's really crazy excessive. The big thing with this, obviously this motor's mounted in the car backwards. We're running up to, I think we're getting to 7,600 RPM. Factory rev limit for this motor is like 6,800 or something like that, maybe even a little bit less. So we are going a lot higher with the revs. We're running a thicker grade oil because of the pistons and bearings and because it's a race car. It's possible I didn't let the thing warm up enough, like engine coolant temp would have been all right. Oil temp, maybe not. Too much pressure, higher revs, pumped it all up to the top. The oil that we saw that was in the catch can that came out possibly all happened in the first lap or but it's hard to know. Back in the aircraft industry, we had to come up with a plan. We had to come up with a plan to figure out what something was doing. An aircraft was venting fuel at certain stages in flight and they weren't sure when. So I said the plan that I came up with was to remove some of the hoses, replace them with clear hoses, and get some Muppet to sit in the back of the airplane. It was a meat bombing plane, a parachuting plane. We call them meat bombers. And have a look, watch it. Then you can see when the fluid's going through the tubes because it's see-through. Great idea, they said, so jump in the back, Glenn. Cat didn't really want to do that, but whatever. So well, there were squabs, but there were no proper seats. There were no harnesses or anything, and I'm sitting in the back of this airplane, which takes off and climbs at a 45-degree angle. So not vertical, but, you know, heading in that direction, up to 10,000 feet. Got to see what was going on there, and I digress, haven't I? Never mind, it's a good story. And so the pilot wanted to know what now, and I said, well, you have to fly it. How you fly it when you're doing your job, because otherwise we're changing the experiment. So just do whatever you do. So this guy puts the prop into what they call beta, which is where the blades are basically flat to the airflow. So instead of having it curved so it's pushing air towards the back of the airplane, they're literally flat, so they're blocking any air coming through the prop. And then he stands the thing on his nose and goes basically straight down. So pretty much 0 G in the back of the aeroplane, and I'm floating in the air watching the fuel hoses. But it was good because we got to see what was going on. So the same concept could very easily be done here. These hoses for the catch can could be replaced with clear hoses. We put a GoPro in the back here, go for a drive around the track and see when it is actually pushing oil into that catch can, and it'll give us an idea of whether it is a issue with the ventilation system or whether the engine's shagged. It's probably not, because you would think if it was just purely the engine being excessive blow-by and damaged, for the lack of a better term, or just not built correctly, or just not looked after, or whatever, all those things, you'd think, a bit shaky today, Glenn, you'd think if it was that, then it would have filled up that catch can on the dyno, because we were on the dyno a heck of a lot longer than we were on the racetrack yesterday, and we certainly didn't put, there was nothing, there was no oil at all in that catch can. Yet on the racetrack, we managed to overflow that. It's a big catch can. I'm not sure how that actually happened with the sump level. But never mind. So yes, the video, the in-car video, the big spin on the exit of turn 1 is because that had overfilled, or maybe not quite overfilled, but there was enough gases coming through it to get it to come out of that filter instead of settling in the bottom or whatever. Maybe that needs some baffles in it. It's a long way from the rear tyre, from there to there, but it's managed to run out of here, come down, sit on the top of the what there is of the floor pan, the chassis, etc. Find some nooks and crannies to run through. Some of it's accumulated in our under tray here, which is great. That's a good spot for it. Really wasn't a lot there at the end of the day. There's probably 50 mils spread out over a big area. And unfortunately, some of it managed to find its way onto our new aero that we've put under the back of the car here, on the back of the side skirts, which has directed it straight on onto the rear tyre. So I'm in confirmation that my aero works, because it blew it all out onto the tyre instead of, it should have come in to the diffuser if we didn't have any effect going on there. So yeah, one good thing out of it. The tyre's okay. I've given it a degrease and stuff. It'll be alright for GTR Festival and stuff. It's not going to be alright for Superlap stuff and things in the future. Probably not. They probably need to replace it. There you go. So I don't think it's actually got anything wrong with it, but we need to confirm. Maybe put it on dyno and run out and see, just measure how much blow-by we do actually have when we've got boost going into it. Maybe we need to pull a little bit of boost out. Shock horror. All right, here we go.